So you're going to start off with a slip knot, and you're going to make a chain of 20. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 and 20. So this measures about 13 centimeters. You can see that. And if you're doing for a bigger size, I would advise you to do some more chains. You go some chains up, maybe to 15 for a size medium, about 18 to 20 for a size large. So after your chain of 20, you're going to go into the second chain from the hook. So not this one, but this one. So you insert your hook, pull up a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over, insert your hook into the same exact chain, pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through all. So that's our very first bean stitch. And then you're going to chain 1, skip 1 chain, and then into the next you're going to insert your hook, pull up a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, insert your hook into the same exact chain, pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all. That's your second bean stitch. So we are going to repeat this. Chain 1, skip the next chain, insert your hook into the next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the same chain, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all. So we are creating these bean stitches. So far we have 3. Chain 1, we are going to repeat this all the way across. Don't forget to always chain 1 in between the bean stitches. So we're in our very last one. So after your second last bean stitch, you'll have 2 chains left. So you'll chain 1 and go into the last chain after skipping the second last. Go into the last chain and place a bean stitch. That's it. And for 20 chains as the foundation chain, I have a total of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 and 10. I have 10 bean stitches across. Then I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. So look closely. You will have a gap here attached to the bean stitch. We don't work anything into the chain 1 space. We go into this space attached to the bean stitch. So after you chain 1 and turning, you're going to do a bean stitch into the very first bean stitch. Chain 1, you'll see that space again, into the second bean stitch, place a bean stitch, chain 1, bin stitch into the next bin stitch, chain 1, and continue to do that. So the number of bin stitches in row 1 will be the same exact number of bin stitches in the next rows to come. So that means row 2 is also going to have a total of 10 bin stitches, because that's the number of bin stitches that we had for row 1. Bin stitch, chain 1, bin stitch, chain 1, bin stitch. So this is our second last one, and then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to go into the 2 loops at the top of the very last bin stitch, so here, and place your last bin stitch. So let's cross check. Row 2 we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 bin stitches. So the number of bin stitches is constant. So chain 1, turn your work, and do the same exact thing as row 2. So 1 bin stitch into each bin stitch, separated by chain 1 spaces. So chain 1, bin stitch, chain 1, bin stitch, chain 1, bin stitch, chain 1. Let me speed through this so that we come to the end. Okay, so we are placing our last bin stitch into the very last bin stitch from the previous row, and this is what you should have. You should notice that the bin stitch creates zigzag patterns and it's highly textured. So this is what we have. Now we're going to continue working our patch until it measures the same length as the beginning length. So we started with 13 centimeters, which is approximately 5 inches, and we want to work our patch until it's 13 centimeters long, so that we have a perfect square. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you guys back when I'm having a perfect square for my patch. Alright, so in order for me to get 13 centimeters, I had to do a total of 14 rows for my bin stitch. So it's 20 chains for the beginning, for the foundation chain, and then a total of 14 rows in order to get a perfect square, which is 13 by 13 centimeters. So after this, after achieving a perfect square, I don't know what foundation chain you started with, because I'm very sure for the bigger sizes you chained more so that your sweater is a bit wider. So after this, you will chain 1 and then cut your yarn. So this patch cardigan is going to be a little bit different because we are not going to be making many of these. Instead, we are going to be working in strips, and by that I mean something like this. These are not joined here with a darning needle or anything. You just continue working on top of what you already have, so that we don't have to go through the hassle of sewing these together. We are going to sew strips together. So this creates a neater look for patchwork cardigans, because I have seen a challenge of sort of untidiness when it comes to people who sew in between these patches. So I decided to do this so that mine is a little bit neater and we have less joinings in between. So after this, you're going to introduce your next color. For me, that will be pink. You're going to make a slip knot and attach into the very last stitch that you worked on your 14th row. You'll just turn your work. So we stopped here, turn your work, and into the very first bin stitch, attach your pink color with a slip stitch, and then you're going to chain 1 and then 1 bin stitch into the very first bin stitch, chain 1, 1 bin stitch into the next, chain 1, 1 bin stitch into the next. So we are basically repeating row 2 that we've been doing all along until we get the length of the pink that we want. And so after row 14 of gray, you should be very aware that all your squares should be a total of 14 rows and a width of 13 centimeters. So all we are going to do is repeat the same exact thing again and again until we have a total of 14 rows for pink. So we are done with our very first row, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The bin stitches are still the same number. Make sure you don't tamper with that, otherwise you'll be distorting the shape of the square. So chain 1, turn your work, and repeat the same exact row until you have a total of 14 rows. So this method also helps us not to have so many loose ends lying around. The loose ends are always, they're only at these points when we are introducing a new color. So let me finish up this row and I show you what to do next. So we are done with row 3 of pink. Now I'm going to introduce one of the strips. So this is the strip that I already worked. It's gray, pink, gray, pink, gray, pink. Now you're going to decide how long you want your sweater to be. Alright, so the graphs that I've showed you earlier on are this is the back panel, and then the 2 front panels. So we are going to be working in strips right from here all the way up, and then we make another strip here all the way up. So this arrangement, you can take a screenshot at this point. Let me just do this so that you can take a screenshot. This is going to help you have the 5 strips that we need in order to create the main body of our sweater. So this is the back panel, and then these are the 2 front panels. So at the end of this all, you will just fold over like this, and then you'll have the body of the sweater, the 2 front panels and then the back panel. I hope this is explaining it well. And then in order to join, you will join from here, from this point all the way up, and then leave 2 patches, and then also 2 patches on the back panel. So we shall have a total of 4 patches left out, not joined in the sides, and this is going to create the hole where to attach our sleeve. So this is the best way I could explain it, because the project is too big and can't all be covered on the camera. So you'll join from here 3 patches up, and then join from this side 3 patches up, and that will create the general shape of the sweater before we attach the sleeves. So when it comes to joining the strips together, you just place your work 1 strip alongside the other strip that you're joining it to, and we are going to be joining using the mattress stitch. So the first thing that I do is to go in 2 times at every corner of each color. So that's what I've just done, and we are going to start going into the ridges. There are ridges in between the rows. There are these ridges. I don't know if you can see them. There are those ridges between the rows. So I go in there and out, and then I go into the ridge on the opposite color, like this. Make sure your work is placed on the right side. Make sure your right side is facing you. So you'll notice that your work will join seamlessly, and the rough part is going to be on the inside of the sweater. And you're going to repeat that all the way up. Let me show you some of the strips that I've already done. This is the cardigan. The actual cardigan. This is the back panel. You can notice that everything is in line like that, and when you come to the wrong side, we have these bulges, but these are going to be on the wrong side of our cardigan, so we don't mind about that. So you join all the way up into the ridges, but make sure your ori is matching up the boxes. When gray is done, that means pink should be done at that point, that same exact point, in order to get something very neat and something that looks planned. So I'm going to go ahead and join the strips together to form the back panel, and then for the front panel, remember the diagram says we have 5 by 2, and that means we have 2 and then all the way down 5 patches. Then same applies to the second front panel. That's what we have. So when it came to the sleeves, I decided to work on them the same exact way as the body of the sweater, but just 4 patches for each part of the sleeve that we are going to fold over, something like this, to form a round garment around our sleeve. So instead of having this as an open strip, we shall fold it over like this, and then we join this part and do the same exact thing for this, and then I'll meet you back to show you how to join everything together. So this is how my sleeve looks like after joining the patches together, and this is how the arm is going to be stretched out, and this is the width of the sleeve. This is the length of the sleeve. So we are now going to start attaching the ribbing on our sleeve so that we get the part that's going to go around our wrist, and this is going to be a little bit gathered. I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so for the sleeve ribbing, you're going to start off with a slip knot, and you're going to make a chain of 11. So when you have your chain of 11, you're going to go into the second chain from the hook, pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through all. That is a single crochet in US terms, and you're going to continue to single crochet into each and every chain until we have a total of 10 single crochets, since the 11th was the turning chain. So when you count the number of stitches after row 1, you should be having a total of 10 single crochets. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So after this, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, And we are going to go into the back loops only. We are creating a ribbed effect, so we are not going into this whole loop. We are only going into the back loop with a single crochet. And you should be having a total of 10 stitches at the end of row 2, just like row 1. So the number of stitches doesn't change. So we have a total of 10 single crochets after row 2, and you can see the ribbing has started forming. After this, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and do the same exact thing. So you go into the back loops only and single crochet all the way across. So as you continue working this, you're going to get a ribbed effect for your ribbing, for your sleeve ribbing. So this is what I'm talking about. As you continue to work, you'll get a ribbed effect and it will be a little stretchy. So let me reintroduce my sleeve. We have our sleeve here, and we want to attach this ribbing onto the sleeve so that we create that gathered cuff, something like this. So for my cardigan, I have a total of 4 patches around my sleeve, and each patch has 14 rows. So that means the 4 patches have a total of 56 rows all the way around. 14 rows, 14 rows, 14 rows, and 14 rows for the gray, which makes 56. So when I was working the ribbing for my sleeve, I considered that each row of my ribbing will get 2 rows from my sleeve. So that means 56 divided by 2 is equal to 28, and that's the number of rows that I did for my ribbing, so that I distribute 2 rows of my sleeve onto 1 row of the ribbing, so that we can get something that looks like this. You can see that. So I've already worked my very first sleeve, and right now I'm showing you how to make the second one. So we're going to do the same exact thing. We want the same look. So after this, after getting your 28 rows, you will chain 1 and cut your yarn, leaving a long tail for attaching this ribbing onto the sleeve. Alright, so we're going to start attaching our ribbing onto the sleeve, and we have, you'll notice that on your work you have this hole here, and then you have a bulge, and then a hole, and then a bulge. That's how I count my rows for this project. So I'll consider this as my very first row, and then that is my second, then the third, then the fourth, like that. So my very first one here, and I'll go into any row of the sleeve. So let me just start with this, the first row of pink. I attach, and then into the same hole on the ribbing, I attach into the next row. And then we go into this hole that has opened up. We attach into the next row, and into the same hole, we go into the next row. So far we've attached 4 rows of the sleeve onto 2 rows of the ribbing, and we're going to repeat that. We go into that big bulge and attach it to 2 rows of the sleeve. So 1 and 2. If you notice that your work is folding, don't worry about that, because that's exactly what we want. And then into that hole, we attach 2 rows of the sleeve. you'll notice that your sleeve is moving very fast as compared to the ribbing. So you're going to do that all the way around. 1 and 2. So we are done with pink, and you can see what it's forming. You keep working around. So right now we have gone to gray. So look at what we have right now. The ribbing is gathering the sleeve in so that the rows of the ribbing can fit onto the sleeve evenly. So that's what we are trying to do. So we are done with gray, and now we've jumped onto the pink. So let me go all the way around, and I'll meet you back at this point. So we're coming to the end, and I have 1 row left, and then I have 2 rows left onto the body of the sleeve. So I'll attach it into those 2 rows. 1. And then the second row, which is the very last row. And this is what you should have for your sleeve. You can see everything has gathered up well. And after this, you're going to close up the gap of the ribbing. So you will just go into each stitch, attaching it to the opposite stitch to close up the ribbing of the sleeve. Just like that. Okay, so we are done closing up the ribbing of the sleeve, and this is how our work looks like. So let me reintroduce the second sleeve, and you see if we have something that's identical. Something like this. That's exactly what we want. These are our puffy sleeves that are going to be placed onto our cardigan. So let me reintroduce the cardigan as well, because now the ribbing is done for the sleeves. So we want to place the sleeves onto the cardigan. So I'm going to get rid of one of the sleeves, and we're going to be working onto one side of the cardigan. So far I have the front panel here, the other one is the back panel, and this is the gap where the sleeve is supposed to fit. So this is the reason why I worked my sleeve in the same direction as the sweater, so that we have the same number of rows to attach around the sleeve. So just like we've been doing for these other pieces, we're just going to go around attaching the sleeve onto the body of the cardigan, but this time you're going to decide how you want your sleeve to be placed. You can decide this, something like that, or you're going to fold over your work and make sure the two colors that look the same, which is gray, make sure that color doesn't meet, like this and this. So it will be down here. So this is what I'm going to work with. This is what I'm going to work with, and I'm going to join this piece all the way around, just like we've been working for the strips of the sleeve. So after going all the way around, I'm still leaving all the loose ends intact because I want to weave them in at the same time. So this is how our sleeve has attached onto the body of the cardigan, and I'm really pleased with the final result. If you feel like it's a bit too tight, if it starts doing something like this, then you're going to just pull a bit so that this strand that you have left behind can loosen up a bit. But this is basically how the sleeve has attached onto the sweater. I'm going to go ahead and do the same exact thing on the other side to attach my second sleeve, and then I'll come back when we are doing the next step of the sweater. Alright, so this is where we've reached right now. I'm done with both sleeves. This is one of the sleeves, and the second sleeve is also finished. So right now we are going to start working on the ribbing on the inside of the sweater all the way up and around to the other side, and then also the ribbing at the bottom. So you're going to choose which one to start with. I'll start with the one at the bottom. So I'm going to lay my work flat. We have the ribbing already made. So for this one, I did the same exact process as the ribbing of the sleeves. I chained 11, went into the second chain from the hook, and started making single crochets all the way across for a total of 10 single crochets. And then for row 2, I chained 1, turned my work, and then worked in the back loop only for a total of, I don't know how many rows, because I'm going to be joining as I go, so that if this is not enough, I can just add some more rows. That's why it's still attached to this side. So I'm going to start attaching from this side, so that in case I have less rows than I needed, I'll just add on and then continue to attach. So sorry, the sweater is very heavy, but I want to start attaching my ribbing. And you're going to get your darning needle and get a strand of yarn, So I'm going to decide how many rows of the ribbing I want onto the sweater so that I evenly distribute the ribbing onto the body of the sweater. So I'll place one row of the ribbing onto each stitch. So remember, for the body of the sweater we have the chain one spaces and then we have the bin stitches. Both of them will be considered as stitches. So when I go into the very first bin stitch of the sweater, I'll go into the first row of the ribbing like that. I'll go into it twice so that it's secure enough, and then I'll go into the chain one space and into the next row of the ribbing. And then the next bin stitch into the next row of the ribbing. So that's all I'm going to do. Then the chain one space into the next row of the ribbing. So there's no stitch that gets 2 rows of ribbing or anything. We're just going to continue distributing the bin stitches and the chain one spaces into one row of ribbing. And I'm going to do that all the way across. I'll meet you back when I have this ribbing attached to my bottom of the sweater. After attaching my ribbing, this is what I have, but the ribbing wasn't long enough. So that means I wasn't able to complete this part, these 3 patches. So I'll go back and continue to work the ribbing until I have the length that's enough to cover up to the end of pink here. So I'm going to do that and then I'll come back to show you the next ribbing. So right now the bottom ribbing is finished all the way across up to the end, and now we're going to start working on the ribbing in the middle of the sweater where the opening is, and that's here along the front panels as well as the neckline. So we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to create a ribbing of the sweater, but this time you're going to start with a chain of 7 and do the same exact process as this ribbing here at the base or the ribbing on the sleeves. But this time we're starting with a chain of 7 so that it's not so thick. We want something a bit thinner for the inner ribbing. So once you're done with that, once you're done making enough rows, you can see I've left a very long strand just in case the rows that I did are not enough to go all the way around. So I'm going to start attaching my ribbing, and I'm going to go into each and every row with 1 row of the ribbing. Okay, here when it comes to this part, I'm going to go into each and every stitch with 1 row of the ribbing. Then when I get to the body of the sweater, you can see some rows start with a very small space. Those spaces will get 1 row of the ribbing, but these rows that start with a bin stitch, those long rows will get 2 rows of ribbing. So 2 rows, 1 row here, 2 rows here, 1 row here, like that, so that we don't tamper with the shape of the sweater, because I don't want it to gather up. So you're going to get your darning needle and start attaching. Alright, so we have our first row here, our first row of the ribbing into the first stitch of the ribbing, like that. Then the next row, Then the next row, sorry, so we're going to just attach a few rows along this ribbing. Just make sure the stitches are not so gathered up. We are keeping a flat surface. Alright, so we are done with this part, and now we're going to start attaching the main body of the sweater onto the ribbing. So I told you the one that starts with a bin stitch will get 2 rows of the ribbing. That's one, and then the next one. That's the second one, and then the next row, which is this one, that starts with a very tiny space here, will get 1 row of the ribbing. So that's all we are going to do all the way up. So if you can't identify the rows, then just make sure you don't tamper with the shape. You can just eyeball and join, but make sure you don't tamper with the shape of the sweater. So you can see what I have here. We're going to go all the way up until we get to this point, and I'll meet you guys back here at this point, and I show you how to work across the neckline. Okay, so I've made it all the way up to the neckline. You can see I've reached that corner, and this is how this looks like. So when you come to the neckline, you're going to continue attaching your ribbing, but we are going to be attaching one stitch to 1 row of the one bin stitch to 1 row of the ribbing. So I have to attach something here so that I get to the stitches. So I'll attach 1 bin stitch to 1 row of the ribbing and 1 row of the ribbing to the chain 1 space. So the next row of the ribbing onto the next bin stitch, the next row of the ribbing into the chain 1 space. So we are not skipping anything or placing 2 rows onto any stitch. We're just going 1-to-1 ratio. That's what it will create. And I'm going to go across the neckline doing this. So we're almost coming to the end of the neckline, and you can see we have only 1 bin stitch left. So I'll go into the next stitch and attach that bin stitch, and then I go back to this whatever I did here, into each row, into each stitch. So you're going to do the same exact thing here on this side as you did on this side. So I'm going to go all the way down, and you can see my ribbing won't be able to make it all the way down, so I'll have to do some more rows of the ribbing so that I have enough to cover up this side of the sweater. So this is how the neckline will look like after that. So let me go ahead and attach, and I also extend the ribbing, and then I'll meet you guys back at the base of the sweater when we are done attaching the ribbing. So after attaching your middle ribbing, this is what your sweater will look like. Everything is in place, and right now the next step that you're going to take is to weave in all your ends and get rid of all the loose strands lying around your sweater, and your project will basically be done at this point.